Alright, so go ahead and get your homework out. Let's check and roll through this guy. So yes, if you didn't simplify, it's fine because all we're using this for is verifying that they are the same length.
You won't count off of that one.
I will not count off of that on the quiz.
I draw.
Quadrilaterals in the coordinate plane?
No, that thing where you like.
It will.
Square.
Quadrilateral in the coordinate plane.
It's not.
Yeah. What's that? Oh, the difference between rhombus and square. So yeah. Hey, again, I need you to limit the chatter. You can do it for 15 minutes. I believe in you. So once they figured out that 4 were the same, it either had to be a rhombus or the square. And what makes the difference is the diagonal. If the diagonals are congruent, it makes the square. So on your quiz, it is going to make one of the 4. I'm not trying to trick you. One of the 4 will be there. And you just have to figure out which one of the 4. Right, any questions? Yeah.
So on the quiz, do we get the formulas or no?
I never give you formulas on a quiz. Yeah, you do.
No, yeah,
Correct. I always give you the formulas. I'm not going to expect you to memorize formulas.
Okay.
I want you to be able to know.
I didn't need formulas. The thing where it tells you the rhombus, where it's like 4 sides but opposite are congruent.
No, those are something I want you to know.
So will the distance formula be on that?
So his question was, are you going to give us the properties of a rhombus? No, those are something I expect you to know for this quiz. When you get to the final, I will give you a thing. But for this in the test, I want you to know what makes a shape a rhombus versus what makes the shape a square, etc. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down to 2. I know you guys didn't do 2, but 4th period did, so they can have the correct answers. I know, big mean guy. And then number 3. So even if we look at this, you guys know it's a parallelogram or rectangle because there's 2 pairs of congruent sides. They're not all the same. What makes it a parallelogram is the fact that the diagonals are different lengths. And if on your quiz, so say you get this, right? So say you get, hey, I found out it's a parallelogram or rectangle, but I do one of these wrong. There's 6 blank, 1 for each of these, and then the name. So if you find out and your work shows parallelogram, I'm not going to mark you wrong if it was supposed to be rectangle because your work says parallelogram. I'll just mark you wrong where you did your work wrong. Right, number 3.
I got it right, Coach.
Got it, baby.
I did too.
Fantastic. And again, 2 pairs of congruent sides. So it comes down to, are my diagonals congruent or are they different? Because they're congruent, it becomes a rectangle. Strong? Oh. Yeah, please keep the chatter down. Do it again.
It's just 15 minutes.
It's 15 minutes. Alright, and then again, y'all didn't do 4, but I'll put 4 up there for 4th period. Alright, what else do we have through this unit that you want to ask?
Oh, let me pull up the notes.
Oh, okay, notes. We like that.
Wait, you kidding?
Eli's pulling up the notes.
Wait, anything after February 28th, right?
Anything in this unit, yeah.
Well, we're not gonna have the same like stuff that we played over on the
Right, you're not gonna have anything about polygons on there, but everything parallelogram, rectangle, rhombus, and square is up for grabs.
Hey, and quadrilateral.
What's that?
Well, those are the only 4 quadrilaterals we've done. We'll do we do trapezoids and kites next week.
Yeah.
For this line, we ask for the slope when we do the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1.
Right.
Okay? But if that's for the length, then we just do the distance.
Right. Length is a measure of distance. Correct. Yes.
Do we have to write how many we missed in the?
Yeah, private comment, how many you missed. Each like math line is 1.
So is because
Can you
there's like
go back?
6 plus the name.
Right. There's what? Yeah, there's 14 total. Go back to what?
The second one.
The second one?
Are there proofs on it?
There are not proofs on it.
And then for squares and a rhombus, we just, like, we do the
Pythagoreans.
You could be doing the Pythagorean theorem, correct? Where's it at? There's loads.
The kid, I was being an online quiz again.
Well, I gave you one online quiz. I don't need to give you two. Third one? Hey. Thank you. He's fine then. Got a question?
No,
No?
I just didn't.
You got it? Alright, so when you look at all these other states. Oh, Peter, did we go too far? Way too far.
Oh, well.
George, you went too far.
I did. Yeah.
She probably got a box.
I was just gonna send it to you.
So no proofs on this quiz?
There are not proofs on the quiz, no.
Thank you.
I don't know.
Alright, so like, if this is a parallelogram, number 11, if this is a parallelogram, opposite sides are congruent. So because they're congruent, you just set them equal to each other. And then because it's a parallelogram, consecutive angles are,
180?
which means they are supplementary, which means we just add them together. So all of our parallelogram rules, the definition of a parallelogram, both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. Then we get both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. Consecutive angles are supplementary. Diagonals bisect one another. And then opposite angles are congruent. We got 5 parallelogram rules. Rectangles added 2. The corners are 90. And the diagonals are congruent. Still a parallelogram. Rhombi put 3 more on us. Rhombus had 4 congruent sides. Perpendicular diagonals. And diagonals that bisect its opposite angle. What's it mean to bisect?
Cut in half.
Cut in half. So if this angle ended up being, what they get for y? 15? So this angle is 67. Cut in half, that would be 33.5.
Wait, why would it
Because they said y was 15, 4 times 15 is 60, plus 7 is 67. Okay, so if it was a rhombus, each individual would be 33.5. And then last one was square, and what's a square do? It's got everybody. All those properties we just talked about is a square. They're congruent on all sides. 4 right angles. Diagonals are congruent. Diagonals bisect each other. So remember, when we find the property of a square, we're really only finding like 4 numbers total. Because the angles are either 90 or 45. And then the sides the same, the diagonals are the same. Alright, what else?
On the parallelogram.
On the parallelogram.
Are there gonna be?
Hey, can I hear his question?
I want like the slope formula. How do we know when to do that?
If it asks you if it's parallel, then you're using slope. If it asks you if it's perpendicular, you're using slope. If it asks you for length, you're going distance.
Wait,
Can you show an example of this slope? In the yeah, the slope.
pass these forward. Jackson, don't you?
Do we need to have a divider?
I think-
We don't want to.
One more time.
Do we need to have a divider?
I don't know what a divider is.
Divider.
Yeah, you have to have a divider.
Have to.
Yeah. So when you see slope, it says the parallelogram and it gives you 2 points. Okay, so automatically we're on a coordinate plane because it gave me 2 points. What is the slope of QR? It's telling you. And then what's down here it says, what is the slope? What is the slope? Okay, so if it's asking for slope, we're using slope. Change of y divided by the change of x.
How many are there on
About 7.
what? Of these?
Yeah, man.
So how many questions are each? 10 questions.
7 questions.
It's definitely like 11 questions.
There's gonna be one big.
Wait, if it gives us like on the first one,
Hey, hold on. I can't. Alright, go ahead.
on the first one, if it gives us P and S,
Yep.
how do we find this? Like, why is that the slope of QR?
What do we know about
Oh,
parallelograms?
is it congruent?
Opposite sides are parallel, so the slopes are the same. And now, if we could have still, if it asked for, well, we couldn't have because it's a parallelogram. But if this was a rectangle, we could have found the other two. But parallelogram, all we can go off is those two. We couldn't find the other ones.
What would make it split, like on the second?
Because that B vertice, the one they're talking about, so it says it gives you point A and point B. And wants the slope of BC, this B vertex, because it's a rectangle, it's a right angle. Right angles intersect at 90 because their lines are perpendicular.
So you just make the slope negative and opposite.
Opposite reciprocal, yep. If it starts negative, it becomes positive. If it starts positive, it becomes negative.
So if it was negative, it would turn into 1/2.
Correct.
And if it's 1/2, it goes into negative.
Correct. Like this one was at negative 3/4. The opposite reciprocal was 4/3.
So if it's that's split.
Only if it's like.
Probably. But that only works in rectangle, squares, and then like the diagonal rhombuses.
You always do the reciprocal.
If it wants you to, it's all about what it asks.
Do you have like a calculator, like not like one of the?
Number 4, it tells you it's what kind of shape.
Square.
Square. What do we know about the vertices of squares?
They're all
They're all congruent because they're all
the same. The
exact number. We know the number of a square. They're all 90.
wait, no.
If lines intersect 90, those lines are
45.
perpendicular.
Give it a shit.
Perpendicular.
Opposite reciprocals.
Yes.
Opposite perpendicular means that 2 lines intersect at 90 degrees. Opposite reciprocal.
What's your
Reciprocal is a fraction flips.
Can you go, or,
Which one?
I was gonna say, is parallel the only one that it isn't the opposite, or not parallelogram? I'm reading this wrong.
No, because the vertices of a rhombus aren't
One of
90.
them it said like on the thing that the slope is equal.
Yes.
Which one was that again?
Opposite sides are parallel, so the slope is the same.
Got it.
So that would be true. So if they were asking you, so if they asked you for AB, the slope of CD would be 1/2. Because they're opposite, they're parallel.
And
The
on a
same
rec-
thing down there.
And on a rectangle, okay, then it would be opposite. Okay, got it. Sorry.
Yes. Anything else?
Wait, coach, do you
Yes.
flip it every time?
No.
Only if
It's you have to figure out what it's asking for to determine what you're doing. That's why it's important to first identify the shape, because the shape tells you what properties apply, and then read based on what they want.
Could you
Yes.
really?
So if you have 2 points and they're both on the same like, spot on the y-axis, could you just assume that the slope is undefined?
If you have a graph, yes.
So is it really only to the squares when you flip it kind of? Like,
Squares, rectangles, squares and rectangles have 90-degree vertices.
Okay.
Rhombuses and squares have 90-degree diagonals.
If it's undefined, that just means it's equal to 0.
that means there's a zero in the denominator. You can't have that in mathematics. Because you can't take nothing away from something.
What about 3 squared?
Number 3, if you had started with the undefined slope, flipping it, so imagine it's like 0 over 1 or 1 over 0. When you flip it, now you become a legal math. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
2 questions. If zero's in the denominator, then it's just 0, right?
It's undefined.
So it's in the not the bottom one.
Right. You can't take nothing away from something. Mathematically, it's not possible.
So if there's a 0 in either position,
0 in the numerator is fine.
okay, because then that would
That would be 0.
Okay.
So because
One other question. If line AB with CD have this like on that one over there, would line AB and CD have the same slope or would it?
Why? Why would A, B, and C, D have the same slope?
They wouldn't.
Why? Why not?
Because they're like different directions.
What shape is it?
It's a rectangle.
What do we know about rectangles? They are what?
Opposite sides are congruent, but
No, we're not talking about congruent. We're talking about the slope, right?
it doesn't.
A rectangle is a what?
A parallel.
A parallelogram. Parallelograms have opposite sides that are parallel. So if it's a true rectangle, A, B, and C, D are going to be the same slope.
Okay.
Yes,
How do we get from like on number 2 from a half to the negative?
because it's this corner. So AB to BC forms a right angle. Right angles are perpendicular lines. So perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes.
So just change the sign and.
Right, so you have to take whatever the slope was, flip it, change it from positive to negative or negative to positive. Last one, and one last question. Third,
For number 5.
number 5, on this or
Yeah, on that one, on
this scroll? Yes, number 5.
that one. Why did you use the distance formula?
great,
What's it asking for?
It is asking for the length of the
length is distance formula.
How do I find the length of anything on a coordinate plane?
Distance formula.
No, distance formula, right? That could be on the quiz, distance formula. Yes. All right, clear your desk. All you need is a pencil and a calculator.
Isn't erasable time okay?
No, pencil and a calculator.
Oh, can you have one more question?